Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're attending. A pleasure to have you online for this webinar on a very interesting topic that my colleague, Professor Rachel Kroll, and I will be leading us on. I'm sure everybody in attendance, those of you who are part of a business family, or those of you who advise and serve business families, recognize that this topic is very relevant for today, that the modern family is indeed morphing. We're going to be talking about how it's morphing and why it's morphing and what else we can, and what the role of family councils is in not only monitoring how families are morphing, but also trying to keep up with these changes and making sure that the modern business family is still able to maintain its unity and contribute. I'm joined today by Professor Rachel Kroll, a longtime colleague. We work together with business families on now a few continents, and have over the past number of years, Rachel has really developed quite a deep understanding of the role of family councils and the particular way in today's environment family councils need to what they need to contribute to the system to make them an effective governance group, but also to make sure that the family and enterprise stay effective. You'll hear from Rachel in a bit. We're both part of an organization that we're very proud of, one that has been around for more than 3 decades, active in research and education for sure. That tends to be the foundation of how we build out all of the services that we provide to family, both on the education and advisory side. We've always been a very international group. To date, we've worked in more than 70 countries and have benefited from a global perspective on the issues of the family business, the family office, the ownership group, the family. And over these years, it's given us an opportunity to track changes, to understand how businesses themselves are changing, how the family office, which is a more recent phenomenon in family enterprise, is changing pretty rapidly, how ownership groups need to adapt to these changes, how talent development in this quickly changing environment needs to adapt. So we come to you today with a wealth of experience working with families like yours. And this experience, beyond our academic training and work, has really informed what we're going to be talking about today. During this next hour, questions will occur to you, and or comments that you want to make will occur to you. If you locate the Q&A button in the center of your screen, and if you click on it, you'll be able to submit your question or comment. We will track those, and at the end of this webinar, we will refer back to them and answer as many questions as we can in this hour. Our focus has been for a long time. You know, we started out 33, almost 34 years ago, really focused on the family business, but soon understood that, first of all, the family had interests, activities, and indeed other assets besides the family company. It was important to understand the big picture of what the family owned and was active in order to even advise on family company issues. Our lens has, for now a couple of decades, been the full family enterprise. And if you look at this, what we call the flower petal diagram, you will see in your own system these other circles, these other petals that you can recognize as important in the agenda, the big agenda of a family, such as yours. We know that to perpetuate even the family company, you need to have other assets, other activities that not only provide a sound financial foundation for your family, but also help to attract the interest of your family and encourage its unity and give opportunities for family members to participate, contribute, and help lead the overall enterprise. The family that we're talking about today and in general in our work is not all of your relatives, but in fact, what we call the business family. These are the owners, along with their spouses or partners, their immediate descendants, kids, grandkids, etc. That is the business family that owns and is contributing to the enterprise. And if you want a high-performing family enterprise, and think again of this flower petal diagram, if you want a high-performing enterprise that endures, we all recognize that you need great management, an effective organization for your business, for your family office, for other activities that you're doing. And in our world, you and we clearly understand that this needs to be supported by a group of loyal, capable, active owners. And these owners give a foundation not only of stability for the enterprise, but provide broad direction for what the family and its enterprise do. And the ultimate foundation is, in fact, this business family that needs to stay united, needs to stay industrious or hardworking, and it needs to produce family members who contribute to the activities of the family, including being good owners, providing board members, perhaps being active in the operations of whatever the family does, and then outside in the social arena, being contributing good citizens and helping to build, not only to help make their environment better, but also to build the reputation of the family. So we're going to be focused on this important ultimate foundation for the whole enterprise, the family itself. And we know that the family council, in a variety of ways, helps to keep the family focused on its big agenda, develops unity, and along with unity, family decisiveness, helps to develop key talent, helps to organize and motivate the family to provide more social impact, helps to maintain and enhance communication within the family, between the family and its various activities, and to set the rules of family governance. This understanding of how to guide the activities of your family council have been part of our practice now for over 30 years. And we continue to learn and spread what we're learning about effective modern practices in family councils. And we'll be talking at the end of this session about the program that we offer, helping to make your family council even more effective, which we all need to focus on. Today, we're going to launch into this topic of the modern business family, how it's changing, the implications of these changes in the family for the broader family enterprise, and what family councils can and need to do about this changing world and the changing family that we're experiencing. And then we'll come back to the program and give you a brief explanation about it. So, how are modern business families changing? In my work over the last, more than 10 years now, I've been tracking how the world itself has been changing. In 2017, I actually moved from Harvard Business School, where I was very happy teaching, down the road to this great business school, the Sloan School of Management at MIT. In fact, because I needed to be part of the conversation happening at MIT about how the world is changing. And MIT is responsible not only for studying it, but for driving some very important changes in technology, which are in fact shaping the world that we're in today. And it's clear to all of us that technology, AI, is only the latest innovation in technology that we know is shaping the world. But there are hundreds of types of technology that are remaking how we do things, how we communicate, how we interact in the world in various activities that we're involved in, including in our family. We know that force is active, always has been, has become even more of a shaper of modern life. Geopolitics and its effect on globalization, or now deglobalization, the socio-political economic forces that are around us in our own countries, in our own communities, we know that these are changing. There are increasing tensions in society, increasing social needs in society, and a lot of the way societies and economies have worked in the past don't seem to be working as effectively today. And the big ultimate disruptor to life is at the top of this diagram, what we call environmental degradation, which is proceeding at an alarming rate, and occasional ecological disruptions such as COVID. These four big forces are active today and shape society, shape the business world, including in our space, family businesses, family offices, and also family philanthropy is being shaped. And then finally, enterprising families. Most of the attention that you read about, that you hear about, that you attend podcasts on, about how the world is changing, really do focus on the top two categories. At Cambridge, We pay a lot of attention to those, but also really focus on how the family itself has been changing. And three ways that we want to review with you about these changes are, first of all, demographics. What the modern business family looks like. And we know that it's smaller. Women are having fewer children. So the basic nuclear family has been actually shrinking in the Western world and in most countries for about 4 decades. But these families, because of the blending of families, is becoming more complex. And within families, we see more diversity. There are more generations. There are more different roles. Women have some different roles that they didn't have 3 decades ago. There's more social diversity. There's a variety of parenting and partnership arrangements in families today. And then on top of that, families, we have seen this now for quite a while, are becoming more geographically dispersed and even more international. Decision making, how families communicate and decide and negotiate around important decisions they have to make, also has been in motion. What you've seen really since the 1970s, so what is that, 50 years, is that families in most Western countries, this may have been led by families in North America, but it's becoming, we see it everywhere that we are working today, have become more individualistic and egalitarian. The strict family hierarchies where parents could direct and tell the next generation what to do with their lives, not only where to study, but what to study, and where they should live, and what careers they should have, and even influence who they marry. That hierarchical orientation in families has been declining everywhere for a long time, so that now you've got parents are still have more influence because they're parents and also because they still control a lot of resources. But the family itself is much less hierarchical. There's significantly less deference to senior generations on the junior generation's major life decisions. And all of that, taking all of that together, as the family business and the family enterprise have grown up, it's become more complex for a lot of the families that we work with. And the role of the family in that enterprise is also changing from being absolutely on deck operators of whatever they had to more strategic roles, ownership roles, board roles, et cetera. So within this context, the role of the family itself is changing. The desires, the interests, the aspirations of families also seem to be in motion. What we know we've done a ton of good research on the millennial generation, for example. I've got a couple of papers coming out on that. I'll try to give you a readable version of those. But what we know is that it started with Generation X, but it really accelerated into Generation Y, or the millennials, and now we're seeing it in Z as it's coming online, that there's a strong interest in less traditional career paths. Part of this is driven by the fact that in this world that we're in, people have more choices, more options. Your customers do, your employees do, but your next generation members of your family also have more choices, more options, and they're choosing to exercise and pursue some of those options. And that makes the modern family more choiceful, more voluntary than it's ever been. And in addition, parents, starting in the 1970s, I believe, started to move away from saying, your first obligation is your family. That at one point was absolutely the case in business families, to really emphasize the happiness, the fulfillment of individual family members. And that's a good trend. Helping your next gen members be who they want to be and pursue careers and lives that will make them fulfilled, a great practice. But around that time, we started de-emphasizing the second message, which is compatible, saying, but don't forget your responsibility to your family. So this dedication to individual goals has helped to make the family much more individualistic. And as we look at modern families, we see that the two generations, or three, are diverging more and more on some key priorities regarding the running of the company, what the company should do, its social responsibility, workplace environment, attitudes. There's more divergence between these two generations.
So what about these changes? What are the implications for the broader enterprise? And specifically, the Family Council is one governance entity, one group of leaders in the enterprise. What can that body, the Family Council, do now to help lead the family to adapt and thrive in the face of these changes? So first, let's drill down on changes in demographics. What are some implications? There's a lot here. Greater diversity, right? That means within the family, there's a greater range of opinions and perspectives, lifestyles, even languages to shape dialogue that's happening within families. With a greater range of opinions, there's a need to approach family dialogue and conversations and decision-making in a different way to be able to effectively hear, draw out those differences in perspectives and engage with them. Greater differentiation, different kinds of partnerships, blended families means that defining who we consider not just part of our family, but our business family requires a little bit more attention to detail to make that definition clear. Smaller families, longer lifespans means that you have multiple generations active together for longer periods of time, working together in the business and in the other enterprise activities. That can cut both ways. There's more opportunities for cross-generational work, idea sharing, coming up with new and exciting approaches and partnerships. At the same time, it makes it a crowded space to be working, to be leading, and to be owning. And ownership control tend to linger for longer in the senior generation as people live longer. Not just diversity, but dispersion. There used to be a stronger center of gravity or nucleus around a hometown, around a business headquarters, as family members spread out across their nation and internationally. What goes away? And I'm sure a lot of you on this call have seen this. There are fewer casual social interactions. We're not running into each other on the street or gathering together at grandma's house for a Sunday lunch or dinner. Those kinds of interactions can't happen organically when you're not in the same place. There's less of a natural connection between family members and between family members and their business, which means there's a need to have to work harder and more intentionally to create that pull back towards the center to attract family members' interest and attention and talent back to the enterprise. What are some things that family councils can do about this? First, really important to focus in on a family's values, mission, and vision, these guiding statements. As families become more diverse and more dispersed, we need to be really clear on what we have in common and what we're working towards. And it not only needs to be clear, it also needs to be compelling. So it's not the family council's role to dictate to the family what its mission is or what its vision should be, but what the family council should be certain to do is make sure that they are bringing together a family at the right times to revisit their mission, re-articulate it when needed to check in to make sure it still resonates with the next generation. And for vision, making sure at least every 3 to 5 years, we're coming together to talk about what we want to accomplish in that shorter time period. So it's the family council's responsibility to put those on the agenda at the right time. Another really important area to focus on for a family council is being intentional and purposeful about building a certain kind of family culture. A family culture can serve as that gravity and that glue that holds family relationships together. And in our work in families, right, you might have all kinds of differences in your family traditions, but at the bedrock, it's important to have a family culture that's both aspiring, right? We want to do good things and accomplish things, and we're caring. We're a family that supports one another. In the face of diversity, it is also important to make sure within the family culture, it's known to all members that we prioritize and are in favor of inclusion. Let's harness the value of diversity, bringing in new perspectives and wrestling with those differences is a tremendous source of value creation in a family. And it's the family council's role to ensure that all family members have a sense that this is an inclusive and aspiring and caring family culture. Finally, as I had mentioned, just previously, if family members are simply physically more dispersed, then you can't rely on an organic connection, organic interactions, and you need to plan regular moments of connection, making sure when you come together, for example, for meetings, that we're not just there for business topics. We have blocked out time for social interactions, for fun, for entertainment together, opportunities, particularly for the next gen, even earlier, to be introduced to the family business, the enterprise, those other important social impact or investing activities, to pull them in and make sure that they are exposed to those aspects of the family enterprise. And it just has to be done more intentionally than it had to be in the past. Now, any presentation around how things are changing and morphing in today's world would not be complete without a little discussion of ChatGPT, which is shaping so much of the change and some of the technological disruption that, John, you mentioned is such a strong force of external change impacting families and industries. So ChatGPT, this is an advanced artificial intelligence. It's essentially a chatbot on steroids. And so it is this artificial intelligence. Users can put in really any question or prompt, and then it can generate new original responses to these questions or prompt in pretty sophisticated, pretty human-like ways. And I'm sure you all have seen at least some news stories of how people have been experimenting with using this tool, thinking about the way that this new advanced AI is going to shape and change our industries and businesses and what work looks like. But let's talk about how this could be a really great tool for family councils. Now, this tool has some limitations. It has an incredibly expansive knowledge and database of publicly available information on the internet that it has been trained on. But it has two main limitations. The first is that it is not up to date on current events. And the second is that it doesn't really care if something is true or not. So what can ChatGPT do? It can write a pretty decent essay. For example, for a college course, a college history course, let's say, could write an essay on the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, and it would be pretty good, but it might completely make up its citations. So we want to be aware of those limitations when we put it to work on behalf of the Family Council. But one of the descriptions that I have personally found to be most helpful is to think of ChatGPT as a very eager, very bright, very hardworking intern. So it can do a lot of good research and background work for you, but you'll still need to give it direction and check its work at the end of the day. So how might a family council put this intern to work to help support the efforts and the initiatives of the Family Council? Previously, we were talking about the need for the Family Council to promote more ongoing and regular instances of family connection and relationship building. So let's say, here you are, you want to use ChatGPT to help your Family Council do this. And you might think, look, we need to just do more, have more discussions. I want to come up with some creative prompts or questions to use in our next newsletter or family meeting or family Zoom hangout. This is an area of work that ChatGPT can really excel at, creative brainstorming. So I'll show you here a screenshot of a prompt that I put into ChatGPT. Come up with 5 community building questions to prompt a discussion among family members who live around the globe. And I told it the questions should help family members share new things with one another and strengthen their personal relationships with one another. And pretty instantaneously, here's the list of 5 that ChatGPT generated for me. What are some unique or interesting traditions, experiences, or events that you've encountered in the part of the world where you're living? Could we consider incorporating any elements of these into our own family traditions? Could each of you share a recent challenge you've overcome or a joyous moment? Number 4, how has living in your current location changed your perspective or attitude toward a certain aspect of life? Or here, right, we have different routines and habits. Could you share a day in your life with us? Maybe these questions are compelling to you. Maybe they need some tweaks from your perspective, but it's really amazing that with ChatGPT as a family council, you don't have to start from a blank sheet of paper. This allows us to generate much more quickly and more easily some new creative ideas, which might be for these discussion prompts or other events or activities that the Family Council might be planning. So we encourage you to play around with it, see what you can do to put ChatGPT to work for your Family Council. Let's now dive a little bit deeper into the second category, that families are changing in terms of how they make decisions and what they're making decisions about. What are some of the implications here? John, you mentioned this longer term trend towards more individualistic outlook, a focus on accomplishing the goals of the individual. And at the same time, right, we can't let that completely drown out the big family goals and the big agenda topics. So what there's going to need to happen moving forward is a regular rebalancing of these goals. Do we have them right sized and sitting next to each other? as businesses and industries are changing, right, are we also thinking together, where does the family fit into the enterprise in terms of how we can most effectively use the enterprise to meet and support both these individual goals and family goals. Less hierarchical orientation in families means that there's more of an expectation that decisions will be made in a consensus approach rather than a top-down, you do what you're told kind of way. So there is a need for and an expectation for a more interactive and consultative decision-making process. There is also greater pressure for transparency and information sharing that is trickling out across the enterprise and the family. So what do family councils do with this? The first is, right, again, we need to put it on the agenda. Make sure we're having some activities and some conversations together to build this big family identity, to make sure everyone is aware of what we can do together that we can't do individually, and how we can work together as one team. As family councils, you need to become good at consensus building processes. So if you're unfamiliar with what those are and what they look like, it's time to go do some research and bone up on this process so that you can lead the family through it. To also be aware that this kind of decision-making process takes more time. And so we will need to build in that time accordingly. And finally here, what does this mean for talent development? It's a big responsibility of the family council to develop talent in the family, but for what? One key topic to make sure not to overlook is in the softer skills or emotional skills piece. If the next generation is looking for more autonomy and to make more key major life decisions themselves and earlier in their lives than in the past, well, then they need the training and the support and the coaching to do so. For the senior generation who might be wanting to help guide and consult with the younger generation, they're going to need a different set of communication skills potentially. So they can't necessarily rely on their skills of laying down the law in terms of what needs to happen or what they want the next gen to do, but how to really be a supportive life coach to the next generation. Now, as a family council, you might be wondering, right, how do I go about teaching these skills to my family members? And you can here again enlist the help of ChatGPT. Another strength of ChatGPT is to help individual users get smart quick on a specific topic and to serve as almost a tutor or coach as you learn more about a given topic. So you might use it as a family council to help you identify specific skills and understandings for the family to build. So I'll give you an example. Here's a prompt that I put in. Write an advice column on specific life coaching skills that parents can learn if they want to support their adult children as those children make significant life choices. And I wanted to make sure whatever I read on ChatGPT was interesting. It wasn't too academic or dry, so I asked it to use the style of a TED Talk. And I won't read through what's on your screen, but here you see a list of 6 specific skills that ChatGPT has pulled from this one field of life coaching to then apply to the parenting of adult children context. So this can be a helpful starting point as a family council as you are designing your education agenda. And it can even help you go into more detail and you're saying, well, that's a lot of information. How do I put it onto a PowerPoint slide? And here ChatGPT has helped me create a learning pathway and condensed it down to what can fit on a slide. Another way that we invite you and encourage you to see how you as a family council might be able to use ChatGPT to help you in your work. And finally, let's take a deeper look in this third category of the way that modern business families are changing in terms of what they want from the enterprise and what they want to do for their enterprise. John, you mentioned this. We're seeing increasing optionality The next generation has more choices than ever before, open to them in both their professional and personal lives, which means it's a competitive marketplace out there, and the family and its enterprise needs to compete and appeal to some of those interests in terms of looking for flexibility in work, meaning in work and other life activities to attract and draw in next gen back to the enterprise. It might also mean that we'll have to rely more on non-family talent in certain areas to fill in the gaps. And we should expect to see more divergence between generations on certain issues, particularly related to what the future is going to look like and what the family should be doing to get ready for that future. So again, specifically, what can the family councils do? One important thing here is to take a look if you already have a family employment policy or if you're going to create one for the first time. Make sure that it is drafted with the next gen in mind. Does it provide flexibility? We're looking for more and more a more tailored approach to be qualified, to be educated, go into the family business, to maybe come out of the family business, to re-enter in a different way. These policies will still need to be clear to think about, is the current policy appealing enough to attract next generations to join the family business for their career? Another key role of the family council is to facilitate cross-generation perspective taking. So again, do some research, collect some data externally on general trends in terms of these generations, millennials, Gen Z, even the next one coming up, Gen Alpha. Talk to your family members and facilitate dialogue so that everyone in the family has a sense of some of these generational differences and trends. And the last point here is really crucial. And this is a big focus of our Making Family Councils More Effective program, which is the family council's role as a strategic leader of the family. Make sure that the family is thinking about and tracking how the family is changing, how the world is changing, what that means, and not what that means necessarily for today, but what we need to start building today to be ready for 5 years, 10 years in the future so that our enterprise is still high performing and enduring. All right. So, John, we've shared a lot of information quickly about how modern business families are changing and what family councils can do about it. There's a lot that was unsaid or undiscussed today, but we invite you and hope that you'll join us to continue the conversation in our Making Family Councils More Effective program. This is a live online program. It's runs over 4 days. You can see them here in September. The focus of this program is really for family councils who are beyond the startup stage. They've been at this work now for at least a few years, but they're wrestling with some of the common challenges that are listed here on this slide. How do we as a family council keep our family connected and engaged? How do we lead our family through change? What can we do to prepare our family for the future? I think in terms of time, John, I'm going to move us through this slide, which just shows, it's one of the key frameworks we use in our program, where we really think about taking the family council from a startup entity down here at one to being a strategic leader of the family. If you're interested in attending this program, here's what past participants have seen as some of the key takeaways. You'll walk away from the 4 sessions of this program with some concrete action plans and next steps to guide the year ahead in the work of the Family Council. You'll really get a ton of exposure to best practices, working on some conceptual understandings, but also some really tactical, practical practices to take with you to help your family council work on behalf of the family. And you'll see a lot of specific examples from other family councils. You'll have what can sometimes feel like a rare opportunity to speak and meet with other family council leaders, members, or supporters from around the world, and expert faculty who also provide some individualized coaching. The program is open to current family council leaders and members, potential future council members, and other governance leaders who are working within a family enterprise. So we'll also see board members, owners, councils members, some non-family supporters as well. And we encourage families to attend in groups and teams to get the most out of the program. We'll cover a few different themes. What is the family council's role, how to be a strategic leader, what to do to really think deeply around family unity and how to develop family talent, and how to measure, importantly, and track and broadcast the performance and impact that the family council and its work is having. So here there's the link to register for the program. Encourage you to take advantage in the next few weeks of the early registration discount. And would look forward to continuing and actually having more of a two-way conversation with those of you on this call who are interested in diving deeper on the topics we've talked about today. John, let me turn it over to you for some closing thoughts and comments, and then we can take some questions.
Thank you, Rachel. I think in the interest of time, we should move right to questions. And the only thing I'll say at this point is that this program has been in evolution and tested in grounded experiences with family councils themselves. There's nothing that we teach in this program is theoretical. It's based on good conceptual thinking. We've found a way over the years to explain things in concrete, crisp ways, but it's all based on grounded experience. And you'll get a lot out of the program. And I think you can see from our thinking, especially Rachel's great grounded understanding of family councils, that we've got a lot to share. And we hope you'll join us and be part of that experience. So let's move to questions. Questions and comments.
Thank you, Rachel and John, for your very interesting and relevant conversation. You know, researchers who study the evolution of families have expressed astonishment at how rapidly the family has changed in recent years. And you've shined a light on several of these transformations. So thank you. The participants have been active in the Q&A, so let's turn there. And if you have other questions, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and send them in. Here's a first question. One example of diversity in our family is around broader societal issues. Family members feel strongly about certain social movements and social issues and want the family to talk to the business and the board about how the family will take certain actions and make certain statements. How does the family council communicate between the family and the business about something like this?
I would say two things. One is the family, but more particularly the ownership group, family owners, have an obligation to guide the board in what's important to the family. One of the legitimate things that a group of family owners can direct the board on is how they want their company to be a good citizen, what that means to the family. And it can mean a variety of things. Being a good citizen might mean we don't pollute, or we try to manage that, or it could mean we have a great workplace, or it could mean that we give back in other ways to our community. if that's important to the family, it should be understood by the board, because that could affect some important directional and even tactical decisions that the business needs to make. But when families are divided around their social goals or attitudes about certain social issues, they need to be careful not to compete for the board's attention, and not to be able to and not to confuse the board where it doesn't want to do anything because it's going to offend one part of the family or another. It's the obligation of a family, and this is where family councils can be decisive and so instrumental, to come to some consensus around particular attitudes or goals, workplace goals, community goals, environmental goals that they can agree on and communicate. It's a complex world, and families can become divided in political and social ways that can not only affect family unity, but affect ultimately their ability to effectively guide their boards and management teams. Family councils have an obligation to step into that brew and help drive out whatever consensus they can drive out. Let me stop there, and hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you. Next, a comment, not a question. I am supportive of your suggestion to intentionally create in-person activities for the family. We find that the young generation has weaker socializing skills because they rely on technology so much to connect. Our family council is attentive to this and is creating activities for social interaction in real life. Thank you for that comment.
Great.
Next question. In reference to your recommendation for tailored talent development plans, how do you manage this when holding next generation members to different standards or using different training approaches can lead to different levels of competency and understandings and education among next generation members?
That's a good question. So let's dive into that one a little bit. If we look historically or traditionally, what we see in families is this idea, education means you need to get a certain degree or an MBA, for example, and that is a box that must get ticked in order to have the necessary qualifications to join the business, to be able to carry out what you need to do in your role. What we're seeing is a shift, not just in families, but more broadly in education and in professional development, to focus more on the skills and competencies that are needed, and less so than on the methods that we can use to help next-gen members build those skills and competencies. So for some next-gen members, depending on the kind of role they are hoping to move into in the business, right, they might need to build some financial skills and literacy. And one way to do that might be through an MBA program, but there are a host of other ways to build that knowledge and that skill set today, whether it's through internships, self-directed learning. So the competencies and skills are not necessarily shifting. They should be clear and they should be tied to the role. But what we're suggesting or seeing working well is greater creativity and diversity in how to educate, the methods and pedagogies to use to get interested next-gen family members ready with the skills and competencies that they'll need. John, what would you add?
Well, the only I like that a lot, and that's but I would just say that the premise of the question, I think, needs to shift. That we're not suggesting, we don't advocate, we think you should avoid setting different standards for different people. The standards should be high, and they should be broadly applied. But the path to, as Rachel is saying, the path to those standards can be different. And we're finding that next gens take the standards more seriously if they can get there in their own way. That's what we're finding.
Mm-hmm.
We have time for one more question. How do you help the two generations find common ground, and how can the Family Council have a role in this?
Yeah. We would say that there has never been a time in history where the two generations have each more to contribute to not only understanding how to be successful. Next gens are typically easier and better and more understanding of new technologies. Senior gens have much more experience with volatility and also much more experience in gauging the reliability of certain people, who to trust, who not to trust. So they each have a ton to contribute to thinking about what we can do and what we want to do. And they need to find more opportunities to sit together and talk together, not just about smaller organizational or tactical concerns, but where we're going as a family and as an enterprise and what we really want to accomplish going forward. It's a rich conversation, but we need to get the two generations more engaged at the table, talking about some of these big issues, and recognize each generation has to be more appreciative and more encouraging of the participation of the other. And it's a big topic, and family councils can be fundamental in helping to get there.
Absolutely. And that was, what I had just written down in response, John, to help those conversations go well and be productive, because maybe you're a little nervous that that conversation will bring people to the table, but how do we make sure that it's productive? Just two things to keep in mind. One is to facilitate the expression of appreciation and recognition of the unique skills, strengths, and areas of expertise that each generation is bringing to the table. And then the other is to make sure, as the family council, you're asking family members not just to share their belief, their conclusion, their advice, but their thought process and why they feel so strongly about something, what in their life experience and what they've learned has shaped their opinion on something, and to go down into the explanation of why and have a dialogue down there can be really meaningful for facilitating this kind of cross-generation engagement.
Yep. Great. So I think we've come to the end of our hour. I hope this has been a thought-provoking and encouraging time, an investment of your time. We hope that we can meet more of you in our programs, and we encourage you, if you have more questions, you see our emails there, please use them. We will do our best to over email or maybe even over a Zoom to try to be helpful to you. Thank you all very much. Rachel, great to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, John.